What if I revealed to you that Max Verstappen's tenure at Red Bull Racing is much more unstable than many imagine? That behind all this apparent harmony, there exists an undeclared condition that could completely revolutionize the direction of Formula One. Helmut Marko has just dropped an information bomb that could shake the structures of the coming years in motorsport's premier category. The Austrian team's consultant revealed something that various specialists suspected, but no one had the courage to clearly verbalize. The four-time world champion Max Verstappen's continuity at Red Bull has a set deadline, and this deadline carries a specific year, 2026. What Marko said on the F1 Insider podcast goes far beyond simple speculation about movements in the driver market. It was a clear warning about how Red Bull interprets Verstappen's current condition and, more importantly, about how the Dutch driver himself is subordinating his permanence in the team to immediate performance with the new technical rules. When Marko declares that Max will reassess his situation if they are not competitive in the next season, he is openly acknowledging that there is a performance condition not documented, but absolutely concrete in the understanding between driver and team. But why is this circumstance so critical? Because since 2020, for the first time, Red Bull cannot ensure that they will provide the fastest car on the grid. The total supremacy that defined the Verstappen era at the Milton Keynes team presented significant fissures during the last season, when McLaren, Ferrari, and even Mercedes managed to seriously question Austrian hegemony. Let's better understand this context. During the previous year, while Red Bull faced its first major competitive turbulence in a long time, discussions between Verstappen and Toto Wolff, Mercedes director, intensified. These negotiations didn't just represent political maneuvers or tactics to force Red Bull to make improvements. They were genuine dialogues, with real offers, that clearly demonstrated Max was truly considering a change of environment. The pilot's calculated silence at that moment wasn't accidental. It constituted a way to preserve all available alternatives while analyzing the future of the team that transformed him into a four-time champion. The implementation of the new 2026 regulations symbolizes the biggest obstacle that Red Bull will face since regaining prominence in Formula One. The alliance with Ford to create an independent power unit represents a colossal undertaking laden with technical uncertainties and financial dangers. While Mercedes, Ferrari, and other established manufacturers possess decades of knowledge in propulsion development, Red Bull is virtually starting from zero in this area. It's comparable to playing a chess match where all other competitors master the pieces, but they are discovering the rules during the game. And we shouldn't forget the historical context of this situation. Red Bull has already experienced a similar circumstance previously when they lost competitiveness after Sebastian Vettel's victorious period at the beginning of the 2010 decade. The team needed years to return to the top, and only achieved this when they discovered an extraordinary talent like Verstappen and created a completely renewed technical approach. But will they be able to reproduce this achievement with the new regulations? And here lies the fundamental aspect that Marko made evident. Verstappen will not wait eternally for achievements. The Dutchman has already demonstrated everything he needed to prove at Red Bull. 4 world championships, various records surpassed, an era of supremacy that has become historical. Now, at 27 years old, he is living the most productive moment of his career and has neither time nor disposition for long-term undertakings that may or may not work. If 2026 doesn't produce the desired fruits, the exit will not only be available but will be executed without hesitation. The timing of this situation is also fundamental. Verstappen finds himself at the ideal age for a relevant team transfer. He is not sufficiently young to be seen as inexperienced, nor too mature to constitute a lasting investment. Any team that manages to hire him will be obtaining not only absolute speed, but also a capacity for technical and strategic leadership that few drivers in history have managed to exhibit. But let's examine the possibilities. If Red Bull gets completely right with the new regulations and manages to keep Verstappen competitive, the collaboration could extend for a few more years, further strengthening the legacy of both. However, if the bet on the independent power unit fails, if the chassis doesn't adequately adapt to the new aerodynamic norms, if the team loses competitiveness as occurred at the end of the previous season, then we will witness one of the biggest transformations in the paddock in recent decades. Mercedes remains attentive to the situation. Lewis Hamilton has already executed his move to Ferrari, but George Russell and Andrea Kimi Antonelli represent a new generation that could benefit enormously from Verstappen's experience and speed. Toto Wolff hasn't abandoned the goal of having the Dutchman in his team, and the conversations from the previous year evidence that there exists reciprocal interest. Ferrari, with Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, also cannot be eliminated as an alternative, especially if they manage to return to the top of competitiveness. Visualize the impact of observing Verstappen driving a red Ferrari car alongside Lewis Hamilton, or perhaps composing an explosive partnership with Russell at Mercedes. These are perspectives that seemed unattainable a few years ago, but now acquire progressively more plausible characteristics. What makes this situation even more fascinating is Verstappen's attitude about this entire panorama. When questioned about his silence during the speculations, he was objective. He doesn't feel the need to keep commenting on the subject because he prefers to concentrate on work and results. This objectivity and pragmatism are distinctive traits of the driver, but they also show a commercial mentality about his own trajectory. Verstappen isn't motivated exclusively by loyalty or emotionality. He wants to triumph, and he goes where he believes he can triumph. Marko's revelation also reveals a fragility of Red Bull that is rarely publicly recognized. By accepting that Verstappen may reassess his position, the team is basically admitting that they have no guarantees the project will be successful. It's an invigorating transparency, but also an indicator of concern for the team's admirers and for the driver market itself. 2026 will not simply be another year in the Formula One schedule. It will be the year that determines whether Red Bull can preserve its greatest treasure or whether we will witness one of the greatest transfers in the history of the category. Verstappen has defined his demands, Marko has publicly confirmed the terms of the silent understanding, and now it remains to discover whether the Austrian team possesses the technical and strategic competence to satisfy their four-time champion's expectations. Formula One is about to experience a decisive year, where successes and failures on the track can totally redefine the future of one of the greatest talents the category has ever witnessed. And you, do you believe Red Bull will manage to keep Verstappen competitive enough to persuade him to stay? Share your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow all the developments of this saga that promises to shake the backstage of Formula One in the coming months.